4 years ago, my sister Daisy went missing. A week ago, my husband slipped into a coma. I didn't realize how connected these events were until recently. Daisy lived with us for complicated family reasons. She was 19 when she didn't come home one day. There isn't an exact moment I can pinpoint the grief starting, because there isn't an exact moment that I realized she wasn't coming home. It was a gradual realization over the course of 2 days, mainly because it wasn't unlike her to be out all night. I always used to blame myself, convincing myself that if I had noticed sooner, we might have found her. About a year later, my husband and I were getting ready to move to our new home. We fell in love with it immediately when seeing pictures online, and that love only got further cemented during our viewing. The place was as huge as it looked. We thought moving here would be the best decision of our lives, although, in the back of my mind, I worried that we were secretly running away from our grief, leaving Daisy behind. My husband simply said, "What if we're running with her?" I never entirely understood it, but it brought me comfort all the same. The move went smoothly, and we helped the previous owner move out too. He was an elderly man with no family, so we felt it would be polite to help out. Before leaving, I remember the words he spoke so vividly. "You'll think you want a big home, until the responsibilities get too much." We both seemed to feel happier after moving, and it even allowed us to explore new hobbies. One of the first things my husband did was set up beautiful flower beds outside. I had never known him to have such a green thumb in the past, but he seemed to really enjoy it. The outside of our home became full of life, as did the inside of my mind. For the first time in a while, I was happy. I always told him how proud of him I was. Every week, he'd buy the same huge bag of cat food. Not for a cat. We don't even have one. Apparently, it's just the best fertilizer. It made me laugh. It sounded ridiculous. But something must have worked. Those flowers bloomed all year round. I lost him without losing him. I woke up without him in my arms and went straight downstairs to find him. I found him unconscious on the kitchen floor with blood coming from his lower leg. I don't know how long he was there, but the blame set in once again. If I had found him sooner, would he have been okay? I called an ambulance right away, but he never regained consciousness. The doctors aren't sure he ever will. When I found him, he was laying next to the well. The previous owner told us he discovered the well whilst having work done on the flooring. He decided to incorporate it into the design, making it level with the floor and giving it a tempered glass top. It dates back to the 1800s, when this building was first constructed as a pub. My husband found it so interesting, always being sure to show it off to any kind of visitor we had. I always just found it creepy. We don't even know how deep it goes. The bottom is never visible. Last week was my first night alone, without my husband in years. I thought I wouldn't get any sleep, but maybe the exhaustion caught up to me. I fell asleep instantly upon touching the soft blankets. I remember so vividly dreaming of Daisy. That is when the thunder began. I woke up in the night to a booming crash. Thunder echoed all throughout the house for at least an hour or so. It frightened me at first, but as the noise died down, it actually became soothing and helped me gently get back to sleep. The next morning, I walked back to the hospital to see my husband. The ground was dry and warm. There was no evidence of the storm I had heard loudly visiting the neighborhood on the night prior. I didn't take this as a clue at the time. It just wasn't my biggest concern. Going to see him felt similar to looking for Daisy. With her, we would go out every day, physically searching for her and places she might be. Now, instead, I wait next to my husband, hoping, wishing for him to come back to me. The next night, the thunder came back, louder and longer this time. I didn't get the satisfaction of drifting to sleep before it began. It was whilst I was laying there, eyes open, that I realized there was no light. Not a single flash of any kind of lightning. Those bedroom windows remained as dark as void. I decided to check the weather. Cold, slightly cloudy. This cycle repeated. I felt like I was going insane. Like clockwork, every night. The same cycle, the same cycle, the same cycle. It got stronger with each night. I spoke to neighbors, doctors at the hospital, friends on the phone. I'd always bring the thunder up in conversation. None of them had heard any thunder. I could not wrap my head around how I was alone in this. Yesterday, my mind seemed to decide that it was time to be active around the house again. I cleaned the dishes that were piling up, emptied the bins, and decided I should tend to my husband's flowers. I was surprised that they weren't wilting already. It gave me a funny feeling that he was still around, taking care of them whenever I wasn't looking. I got emotional as I looked down at them. I wasn't even sure how he applied the cat food fertilizer. I had never really seen him do it. I wanted to smell them first. They always had such a strong and beautiful scent. Yet, this time, nothing. No beautiful smell. Just nothing. Was my sadness running so deep that I had forgotten how to experience beauty? I extended a hand out to touch one. Plastic. I touched another and felt the same thing. All of them were plastic. Every single last one. Even the daisies, planted in memory of my sister, His hobby had been a lie. I was almost angry. But all that emotion came out as tears as I settled for just feeling empty. Why had he lied? That night is when things took a turn. The thunder was at its loudest. I could hardly hear my own thoughts. I knew there was no chance of sleep. I decided to get a glass of water. A decision that changed everything. As I stepped down each step, the noise seemed to somehow get louder. Step. 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 I stepped into the kitchen, and the noise stopped. I tensed up, bracing for the next crash to cut through the silence. Yet the silence remained. Relieved, I flicked the light switch, only to be met with more darkness. The bulb was busted. Fantastic. But at least the noise had stopped. I made my way through the kitchen. The cold feeling of glass at my feet confirmed that I was walking right over the well. I shivered, but not because of the temperature. As my feet made their way back onto the tiles, they hit something far too early. A tile seemed to be broken, or out of place. I couldn't tell. And whilst I could get a glass of water in the darkness, I could not deduce this foreign feeling without the light. So I went to get the spare bulbs down in the basement. Truth be told, I hadn't been down there since we moved to the house. I never liked the spooky atmosphere, but I had to face that fear. And, thankfully, the basement was nice and bright. Regardless, I had no plans to be down there long. I found the bulbs quickly, but as I grabbed one, something caught my eye. Perfume. Lots of perfume. Boxes and boxes of them. None of them mine. And to my knowledge, my husband never wore perfume. Curiously, I sprayed one in the air and smelt it. I was instantly transported to the flower beds. This bottle smelt exactly like the ones outside our front door. So I grabbed another bottle. This one smelt like the ones near our kitchen window. I grabbed another. This one smelt of daisies. I began to piece together what was going on, but I didn't understand why. Against my instinct, I decided to look around the basement a little more. I discovered a wooden box with a label. The Well Diaries. It was locked. Next to it was a collection of framed photos. Each of them contained different people standing at the well. The earliest dated to 1910, and the latest was of my husband, by himself. I had no idea this photo existed. Who even took it? My husband had been lying to me about the flowers, but it seemed like he may have been lying about more, too. I realized at this moment that the previous owner had also lied. The old man claimed he found the well. These photos showed otherwise. It was never covered up to begin with. I also found an MP3 player with only one song, Daisy Bell. The one that goes, my sister had always had that as her ringtone. The final thing I found creeped me out too much. It was a calendar. My husband had marked off every single day. Of course, stopping the day he fell into his coma. There was a note attached. Feed her every day at 7 a.m. I turned around and headed back to the kitchen. This was all too much to handle. I just wanted to get a glass of water and get back into bed. Maybe in the morning I'd have a clearer head and be able to draw a rational conclusion. I went to replace the bulb. Yet, in my confusion, I had forgotten to turn off the light, as the new bulb immediately turned on as it screwed in. The almost blinding brightness isn't what startled me. It was the face I could now see under the glass of the well, staring at me. It was still only barely visible, but I could clearly see two eyes and an outstretched mouth. At first, I was too shocked to notice one of the kitchen tiles open like a trap door directly next to the well. It seemed to hide a small chute covered in cat food leading into the well. I was staring at this creature in fear, yet something stuck out to me. It had Daisy's eyes. The rest of it looked nothing like her. Gray skin, bony shoulders, balding head. But the eyes, they were unmistakably hers. It hit the glass with one of its hands. The noise was like thunder as it echoed throughout the house. I only snapped out of my frozen state when I saw two fingers slowly make their way out of the chute as the face continued to stare right through me. I ran. I ran faster than I ever have in my life. I ran and I ran. And when I couldn't run anymore, I ran anyway. I didn't have a specific direction in mind, but perhaps instinctively, I ended up at the hospital. I sat with my husband, still shaking. I do not plan to go back to the house. It's not safe there. I stared at my husband, trying to calm myself down, trying to think of happier times, trying anything to just forget about what had just happened. Instead, I found something that almost made my heart stop. Around his shin, where the wound had been, his skin was slightly gray. Perhaps I'm being paranoid, but given what I've seen, I think I have every right to be. My sister has become whatever the hell she is now, and I think my husband is going to suffer the same fate. I need to bury him. Right? I mean, that seems to be the entire point of the well. to contain whatever these things are. Clearly, they can't be allowed out. I don't know what to do next. I love my husband. I don't want to have to do anything to him, but I don't want him to become one of those things either. Perhaps I should track down the previous house owner. Perhaps I should try to read the well diaries. All I know is that I can't just forget this and leave. Whatever has been happening in that house, I want to end the cycle.